Hey guys, guess what?
What?
I got my Cypher System rule
Hey,
book.
you finally
Yeah.
got it. Oh,
Hey.
awesome.
That's
Woo.
awesome. Let me get my book. So, where's my book?
Are you looking for this, Anthony?
How'd you get my
Oh,
book?
oh man, now you got me nervous about mine. This is what we get for mocking him last week. Oh, I can't find. Oh,
Al?
how how did you manage this, bro?
How are we supposed to finish the review without our books?
We're supposed to talk about the books.
Yeah, I got PDFs. Remember that?
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
So let's talk about it. Part 3, guys.
Hey yo, it's your boy Agent Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean or just simply Dean. We have our good friend Spigs18 or Anthony. And Dean, why are we here today?
Well, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to do part 3 of our review of the revised edition of the Cypher System Rulebook. And so this is also the final part to this. We're going to wrap everything up. We're going to take on part 4 of the book, which is all about game mastering. And they're talking about creatures, NPCs, ciphers, and basically game mastering the game. Then there is a 5th section, which basically just have all the appendices and things like that. We'll make brief mentions of all of that, appendices and charts and printable sheets.
And for those of you that don't know what Cypher System is, I hope you guys you watched the first 2 parts of the video. But if not, hey, it's Monty Cook Games' universal role-playing system. It powers Numenera, The Strange, Predation, Gods of the Fall, Unmasked, Stars of Fire, which is coming out very soon, and 3 more original settings that should be out by the end of next year. It's a D20-based system where the GM rolls absolutely no dice, guys. All conflict resolution is based on hitting a target number on the D20 from 1 to 10 that is multiplied by 3. It gives you ranges from rolling a 1, which is having to hit a 3, which is super easy, or having a target number of 10, having to hit 30 on the D20, which is impossible without the help of using effort, abilities, or skills. This video isn't about the basic rules of the game, but we all soon we'll be producing a video explaining the mechanics of the game. But this video specifically is a walkthrough of, like what Dean said, of the revised Cypher System Core book.
And so just like last time, full disclosure, we did receive advanced review copies from Monty Cook Games, before the book actually got released. But that is not in any way swaying our opinions. And as a further side note, we have since received the full, actual fully released version because we backed the Your Best Game Ever Kickstarter at the You Want It All level, or I forget exactly what the phrasing was, but it was to get all the books that, they were producing from that Kickstarter. And our opinions are formulated from reviewing the final copy because we have gotten it since then. Let's get going.
All right. Well, first section and the game mastering section is creatures. It starts on page 312 of the new revised edition, and it's actually page 273 in the original book. In the revised edition, and also if it's page 312, then that means it's 314 on the PDF.
Well, to compare and contrast the creature section from the original to the revised edition, not much has changed. I actually think there's 1 less creature in the new version. In the revised version, there's only 59 creatures when the original had a 60 creature count. And I think it's because they no longer have Vampire Lord in the book for some reason, which is okay because they give you 3 versions of vampires anyway under the vampire section. They just omitted the Vampire Lord.
No, which is not, again, a crazy thing because if you have the old book, you can just lift it from there, or you could just come up with your own Vampire Lord using the information found in this section. So this section really breaks down what each I guess, quote unquote, stat for a creature comes down to, which is, it's Cypher system. So the most important thing is their level. It lets you know what to roll against for when they're, attacking or defending. And it breaks down a couple of other things that, help give flavor to the monster, like a description of it, give it its motive. And all the entries here have a little bit of information regarding those things as well. And again, it goes further to break it down into what the actual stats are, such as damage, health, and any modifications they have.
And also for you to make modifications as well.
Yep, and just like the original, they give you an example of a GM intrusion for each monster or each creature on this list, which is always helpful, especially on, if someone rolls a 1 and you have to throw in a quick intrusion, you could always just use the example intrusion they give you.
Yep. It's a very solid guideline for, for putting creatures in your games if you need them. And it goes even further to talk about, like, how to interact with them, what might be their weaknesses or whatever have you. And you don't always have to use them as they are in the book. You can use them as inspiration. Maybe your game doesn't need a Gorgon, but you can reskin it or something like that.
Yeah, and, for as far as universal systems go, I think they give you a wide variety of creatures to use, and it touches several different settings and genres. So, it's not all fantasy based. You basically have fantasy, modern, sci-fi, supers, so it's a good, well-rounded list of baddies.
And just to show you the how diverse the creature pool is in the book, even though there's not a super huge list of them, but just going from page 336 in the physical book over to 339, you see 4 different creatures that are from completely different genres and like such like that. So we get a golem, which is like, a stereotypical like stone golem from a fantasy game. Next page we get a gray, which is an alien, like, just as typically a little big black eye alien, gray skin. Yeah, Men in Black type alien. And the next page you get a kaiju, difficulty 10 monster, which again another completely different thing. And then the next page you get a killer clown, which again just shows you how varied the creatures are in the book.
And going a little further back, you can find detectives and guards and things like that. So it's really, I think they're really reaching out to, well, as we always say, the Cypher system is built to run whatever you want, to do whatever you want. So, just giving you those examples, put you in the mindset that there's really nothing you can't run with this system.
I will say this though, I kind of wish that there was a little bit more creatures in this book. I know, 59 is a good number, but I was kind of hoping that they were going to add a little more to this, maybe like somewhere within 70 or so. But, I could understand the page count of this book already is pretty ridiculous. So I could understand why it wasn't put in there, but it would have just been nice to have.
And you also have to consider, well, it gives you guidelines, for making your own. So it's not super difficult to, expand upon this list. And also, again, I'm not 100% sure if they'll include new creatures, but in those new setting books coming out, I have to assume there'll be some new creatures in there.
Creatures. One thing about Cypher System, Numenera, the Strange, it's totally, compatible. So everything from any Monty Cook Games book is actually compatible with the Cypher System.
Yep.
So you could tweak, a Numenera creature if you want. You could tweak a Strange creature. It doesn't matter.
And with the fact that there's 3 bestiaries for Numenera, there's 1 for the Strange, plus the, 59 that they put in the book here.
Plus what's in Gods of the Fall.
And then you look at Gods of the Fall, Unmasked, and Predation. There's a ton of stuff to draw on. But like we said, the biggest and most cool aspect of it is the simplicity of creating your own. So you have your own imagination to dip into, so it's easy to reskin a character that they have into something else, or just create your own from the ground up. Cypher system is one of the simplest systems, when it comes to, like I said, I'll say it 1,000 times, simple, in its application, but elegant, in its capability. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
When you mentioned Killer Clown, it made me like, I'm looking at the PDF now. I actually want to use a Killer Clown.
I mean, Dean mentioned that he was gonna have a Killer Clown game, I believe, on the
Yes,
server.
killer. I was gonna use. We were talking about predation, and I got inspired to do the killer clowns from outer space, but set it in predation time. So they come to Earth during the Cretaceous period while you guys are there. So yeah, that's kind of the concept. You know, I mean,
But
we were all talking about that. I mean, Anthony's go-to is Children of the Corn. So
and it is Spooktober.
it is Spookytober. So
Yeah, I want to
Spooktober.
use it. Cool.
But yeah, I think any other tidbits to throw at us about the creatures listed here? I think we hit on it
Yeah,
pretty
it's
well.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's just essentially
And
what your monster manual is,
Yeah, and it's once again to state it, I think it's pretty much almost exactly the same. There might be one or two differences from the original. So,
Right.
if you
Oh, and you know what? And we were just talking about, how many creatures are in there. We also forget that in all the genres, they actually throw some
Oh, a
creatures
couple
too.
creatures.
They
Yeah.
throw a couple of creatures. So it's actually more than 59 in that book. I just
Actually, yeah,
had to, think about that right quick.
that was actually a very good observation. Nice catch. So yeah, there is.
I'm just greedy. I always want more. They
Well-
could have put 100 in there, and I would have been like, you know what, man? They really should have been 110.
You just like monster books. I understand.
Yeah.
But what
that
Game
is-
Master Worth of Salt doesn't.
It's definitely very fun, especially with all the nice art they have for each creature. Like, I mean, I'm pretty sure each creature has at least a little. No, not every creature, but a lot of them do have a little piece of art.
No, I think they all do. I don't think there's one that doesn't.
Yeah, I think they all have a picture.
Oh, awesome! Oh, I was looking at the NPC page, so gotta see if Crime Boss here doesn't have a picture.
Actually, Thug doesn't have a picture.
Oh, well, there you go. You gotta.
But that's in the NPC. That's not in the creature
But
section.
either way,
Right.
though, the art is gorgeous, and you always want to see more creatures, kind of more to see more art. I mean, that's one of my favorite reasons.
I mean, that's a given with any MCG product. The art is always top notch.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bear. So let's move on to the next section, guys. This section goes hand in hand with the creature section. It's the NPC section. And one of the coolest things about Monty Cook games is how NPCs and creatures are handled. Whereas in other games you have to build the same type of character blocks, stat blocks, and everything like you're building a PC. Cypher System approaches it from a different direction, which makes creating an NPC very simple. Because, like I said, we're going to get into the rules of the game and the play and all of that in another video, but just to give you a quick overview, the NPCs use levels, health, not pools like the game, like the players in the game. And since the game master doesn't have to roll dice, once again, those levels denote everything, so it makes your life really easy. If you want that character to have a special ability or whatever the case may be, give them the special ability and assign a level to the ability. There you go, it's in the game.
Yep.
I mean, the NPCs are basically formatted exactly like the monsters are, but they're more designed for modern settings, non-fantastical settings. You get the detective, you get the cultists, you get, ninjas, the regular street level thug. So it's better suited if you're running a game that is not necessarily like hard sci-fi or fantasy, but more based on modern times, and it's easier to run with them giving you these templates.
Yeah, and even
They also give you the Mighty Wizard too, like a fantasy game. So I think what it is, I think they only give you a few NPCs and just give you the idea of how to build one, no matter what setting you're going to be in.
that's exactly what I was gonna say.
What's this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They give you 10 examples of NPCs, but they also give you another list of another 10 of how to craft and sort of like level up the NPCs they do give you. You know, like they have detective, and then they give you an example of how to make a master detective.
So if you wanted to make Sherlock Holmes,
Yes, and then they give you politician, priest. You know, they give you so technically they really give you about 20, which is a good number.
Yeah, and again, the most important thing is that it gives you that base for you to work off for your own. And they even talk about reskinning NPCs, which again is an important. We always talk about reskinning, adapting, all that stuff, and it's an important section to include there because people might look at this little list and say, hey, these don't fit in X, Y, and Z genre. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, you reskin them. You want to have an assassin in something that's not like in a fantasy
like a space
setting,
opera.
or in a space opera. You could say it's a space assassin and like it has like a lightsaber instead of the katanas or whatever. Like you can
Or
do
you could
whatever
have
you
them,
can.
or they have like technology that allows them to bend light, so they can literally turn invisible.
Or there we go.
Or if you wanted to, they had nanotechnology where they can infiltrate a place and tap into all the electronics. All those things are right there for you. Like I said, there was a conversation earlier, about Cypher System not supporting their genre books, and I'm like, they should support them every time they put out a product because everything is useful.
Yeah.
You can just, and the biggest thing for me is the fact that you're not shoehorned or pigeonhorned. You know, Nothing against other games, but I love the fact that even with all the products out for Numenera, you still are free.
I always view it like a catch-22. That argument of, oh, hey, they're not supporting Gods of the Fall enough, but then you run the risk of bloat.
Yes.
Right.
And
Right.
I think a lot of times you could create the stuff that you actually want yourself.
Yeah, like
Said, Cypher's it's so modular, it's so easy to craft. NPCs is so easily craft. Ciphers is so easy to craft. Artifacts that you don't necessarily need it force fed to you.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like if you want,
So if they show me how to fish, then I could feed myself. And I think Monty did a really great job of teaching you how to fish.
yeah. So those people who are clamoring for extra content or whatever have you, go get your hands a little dirty, create some. The community loves seeing it. Share with people.
Right.
Spark someone else's imagination and such.
And I'll say this too. Anthony touched on it. Al, you just touched it too. The way the revised edition of the book is set up, it basically gives you the toolkit. Where we were talking about how easy it is to make a monster or craft an NPC or anything like that. Now it's even easier to craft a focus. Where for me, I got inspired by the system in of itself, and I looked at how the focuses were built, the foci were built, and started making my own. But now with this, my job is so much easier. So everybody out there who wants to get into this or considering it, trust me, this is probably the easiest gateway in the game that I've ever seen because it has just enough structure, just enough crunch that you won't be overwhelmed as a game master or a player. And if you've never played, it's a great way to come in because now you don't have the biases and thought processes to overcome. You don't have to make a paradigm shift from games like Pathfinder or D&D or what have you. You have this, you're fresh.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
No,
off.
I'm done.
I mean, I think we hit on NPCs a pretty good amount, and I was just gonna say that what Dean was saying kind of really segues really well into the next chapter.
I just want to say one more thing before we walk away from NPCs. NPCs are also perfect to add minions to your big bad. Like if you could, the way you could incorporate NPCs with the creature, you take a level 7 creature and then you want to just not have them fighting this one level 7 creature. Well, you could reskin Thug, which is a level 2 NPC, and add 5 thugs to reskin it. So that way you have that minion effect.
Right.
These like literal confrontations and fights that they have to go through before they get to the big bad.
And
So
also,
you can utilize NPCs that way.
well, in the same respect too, you got to think too. You can also make the lieutenant, the second in command. You can. There's levels to this thing. That's why the levels are there. So
And just like with everything else in Cypher System, just because the creature is called a certain thing doesn't mean that it can be reskinned to a entirely different genre, a entirely different. You could just take the base stats and call it whatever you want.
Yep.
right.
You know?
Or even change some stats to make it more appropriate for the genre. Like again,
Yep,
switching a
exactly.
regular katana for lightsaber or whatever for a sci-fi genre for that assassin.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think good on NPCs.
Yep.
Good.
But what I was saying with the segue was with Dean talking about how playing Cypher, like you don't have to have that paradigm shift if you start with it. But even if you even if you played other systems and then come to Cypher, the next chapter, which talks about Ciphers, is one of the most unique aspects of the Cypher system, as it's aptly named. But yeah, it in here it discusses what ciphers are and the different types of ciphers and whatever have you. And that starts on page 377, I believe.
377. There's 379 in the PDF.
PDF. Yep. And if our count is correct, the revised edition has 146 ciphers, and the original one has 178.
Right.
That's accurate.
Yeah, but it's a little deceptive.
But
like,
Yeah.
It is a little deceptive.
We'll get
in
into
the
that.
numbers.
Yeah. But either way, so ciphers are really, to break them down, they're one-time use items. They're items that the characters find throughout their adventures. It's a key for driving point for that exploration. You want to find these ciphers because they usually have pretty cool effects. And again, there are two different kinds of them. There's manifest ciphers and there's subtle ciphers. And the book in this time starts around with, I think in the old book it started with manifest ciphers. Yes.
Yeah, I think that this is out of the entire Cypher System book, I think this is the biggest difference from the revised to the original.
Right. And then they also talk about,
Cypher,
just real quick, because Al was talking about the subtle and the manifest, but there's also fantastical ciphers listed here as well.
yeah. But I was just going to touch on, in the original Cypher System book, the default cipher was the manifest cipher.
Correct.
Manifest cipher is a physical cipher. And now in the revised edition, the default cipher is a subtle cipher, which is, it doesn't have to be something physical. It could be a tattoo. It could be a, depending on
it could be an internal inspiration. So, I like to say this about ciphers. If I were to define them for people or whatever the case may be, look at ciphers as, those niche items, those niche situational modifiers. If we want to talk about a subtle cipher, you know what? I love to use this example. You're watching that action movie, Die Hard.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen it, which is terrible, Al. But there's the scene in Die Hard where John McClane is fighting the big German guy, and the German guy is tossing him around and beating the taste out of his mouth. And the guy says something, and something in John clicks, and he jumps on him, and he's like, "I'm gonna eat you," and he just like finds this last ditch intestinal fortitude. That could be a cipher. That could be a subtle
I think
cipher.
that's actually better now. I think subtle cipher should have been the default in the original,
Right.
because I think it's more common to more genres than manifest cipher. So I really
absolutely.
love the fact that they flip-flopped and they made the default and manifest, more
but again,
dependent.
but yeah, more genres can be touched on, because some genres manifest ciphers don't necessarily work. This wouldn't work, for them always finding something. Like superhero genres, that just doesn't. It's not a thing. But a modern genre,
Horror.
or a modern genre, well, actually, horror, I can see a lot of manifest ciphers being around, because guess what? There's, you're in the spooky house, and you find a black candle.
I don't think that it could be. I think that the default should be subtle, because I think that more genres are more inclined to use subtle ciphers.
Oh, no, I wasn't disagreeing with you in that sense. I was just saying that modern takes on things because of itemized ideas. You're in a horror setting. I could make a manifest cipher. Oh, look, you find a cell phone. It's got one bar left on it. You
Mhm.
know, you can make one phone call. That might be the default. For a quick cipher. And I'm only using these as examples to get people to start wrapping their head around that ciphers don't always have to be a weapon. It doesn't
Yeah.
always have to be something that's boom bang bang. It could be just something useful. You know, uh, I find
And
a pair of night vision goggles, but the
yeah.
battery is low on them, so they're only going to last an hour.
Um,
It doesn't have to be something fantastical. It
Right.
doesn't have to be something that it's game changing.
yeah,
But
for oh,
genre specific, like Numenera and the Strange, manifest ciphers are excellent. I just really appreciate the fact that they recognize that manifest ciphers don't necessarily work for every setting. And to flip it like that, like I said, I think it just makes perfect sense.
and
It,
Well,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that it should be very helpful because again they break it down really really well in this book. I don't know if they changed a lot of the wording, or I forget the wording from the first book. But my point was, a lot of people found themselves wanting. I've just from watching discussion on the server, on the Cypher Unlimited Discord server. I found that people are often wanting to use subtle ciphers, but not really knowing exactly how to implement them,
Yeah.
and wanting to fall back to manifest ciphers because they're more touched on, or they just seem easier to implement.
well, I
But
think.
oh,
Well, I'm sorry, Al. Go
no, no,
ahead.
I honestly forgot what I was trailing off
I was
to.
saying, I was saying, see, and I think again, that's that convention once again, and that's what the revised book has done. That's a convention from other systems and other games. You think of, if you come from D&D, you're thinking about the potion, or you're thinking about the scroll, or the thing like that. This thing that is going to give you something. If you're coming from a modern idea, you're thinking about grenades and da da da. Whereas the way I see ciphers, I don't see ciphers as you know a thing anymore. I see them more as a tool. And it's also, to me, it can also become part of the storytelling aspect. You know, um, I'm looking here at the PDF, and I'm looking at how they even give you ideas for um, how the ciphers can manifest themselves as things, and then how they talk about them as subtle ciphers as well. Because like when you talk about like modern and romance, they're like drugs, viruses, smartphone apps. I didn't even think about using a smartphone app as a cipher, but
It's
that's
really good.
cool.
It is.
You
I mean,
know,
I was gonna say I look at ciphers as it's what makes Cypher System unique.
yeah.
I don't think I know of any other systems that have a mechanic like ciphers that could change. You get a different like tool set of abilities. Every game really. If the players are getting ciphers and using ciphers and repeating the process, it's a way of making your character original and different, and be able to do different things every session. Really, you
Yeah.
Right.
know.
And the other thing is, you can use ciphers in other ways as well. You can add elements to your game. Like, for example, we tried to we adapted Dark Sun. We ran a Dark Sun game in Cypher System, and the way we handled wild talents as ciphers, but we handled them more on the lines of subtle ciphers. So you always knew you could find more, but one of the cool parts about it was you knew every night or whatever, whenever wild talents, how in the old game they would replenish, you knew you were going to get a new wild talent at least every day, but they would be different. Even the ones you already had, even if you hadn't used them, they would switch out. So that was a way we use ciphers, in another manner, but it gives a unique flavor to the game in of itself.
And
Um, Go
sorry,
ahead.
I don't know if you
No,
were done
no.
with you. No, I was gonna say, and on top of that, and the book touches on this as well. Whether you allow it or not is up to you. I believe is listed as one of the optional rules. But if a player is creative enough with a cipher, they can possibly get it to do something else.
Yes.
And again, you can discuss it with the GM. There might be a little discussion of what might be too much of an alteration or whatever. But for example, I don't want to read straight from the book, so I'm just going to come up with an example off the top of my head. For example, let's say you have a detonation cipher that's an explosion or something like that, like a hand grenade or something of that nature. You say, hey, instead of it being a hand grenade, I want to like put it on the ground kind of near me and use it to sort of rocket jump. Like, you know what I mean? Like something like creative. Like I would allow some creative use of it like that. And again, that's up to the player being creative enough, seeing that normal grenade and saying, hey, I could do something cool with that. Let me talk about it, and maybe the GM will allow it. And now all of a sudden you can rocket jump. Like,
I mean, the idea would be taking the grenade and putting a piece of metal.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. You phrase it
launch me-
safely. Yeah.
Right, launch me through the air. You know, somebody else was talking about it on the server, and I don't remember the exact method they used, but apparently it was they had a cipher that could melt any object, any kind of ice. You know, it would melt this specific volume of ice, and they faced off against an enemy, and they tricked the enemy because the enemy was using the elements against them. They tricked the enemy into turning himself into ice. But you would have never thought, most people think, oh, I'm gonna use it to melt a wall of ice or something, or to get past something, never to defeat the enemy, which was really smart. They use cunning to trick the enemy into,
I was gonna look at it a different way. Like even better yet, you could incorporate two of the mechanics, player intrusions and ciphers, and to use Al's example is, hey, I want to propel myself 2 stories up this building with this detonation cipher. Here's 1 XP for a player intrusion to make that happen.
Right. Even better.
Yeah, so right. Like you can even like again we're getting into our opinions on GMing, but again if they're proposed this like the thing like let's say if they say what do you want to use the detonation cipher to rock it up, right? You say, hey, if you want to do it, we want to, if they just want to do it to go like a short distance or whatever, they might just be able to do that, for free, whatever. Hey, it's a smart use. But if they want to do like Anthony said, when they want to go like a really tall distance, like hey, there's that 1 EXP, there's that trade-off.
And once again, like the book says, there's no right or wrong answer to this. This is us just brainstorming how we would rule at the table at that moment.
Yes.
And then we that goes into something that they added with Cyphers in this book, the fantastical effects.
You see, I knew that. You see how perfect.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that's how it's really cool. Whereas in the original book, they just had these lists of ciphers. You wrote a D6 and you wrote a D100, and it put you on a specific chart and it gave you something. Now with the thought process is, we're going to give you a little direction on how to make your ciphers do what you want. And guys who've been playing a long time, it's a playground. But for people who haven't played, like I said, I think it's really a cool way to help you formulate an approach. So you look at your ciphers and you look at a typical effect. Let's take the same concept like you were saying. A detonation cipher. You could have a detonation cipher that just does explosion and it just does damage, but start looking at the fantastical effects. You can have a detonation cipher that creates a monster. When it explodes, there's a monster standing there to do your bidding or something. Just crazy, fun approaches.
There's so many routes you could go. I was thinking too, you could have a detonation cipher that deafens everyone within a certain distance or radius.
Yeah.
Right, flashbang, but that's what I'm saying. These are ways to express all sorts of stuff. So ciphers are, well, I'm sorry, Al?
No, it's just I'm laughing because I started laughing as soon as we started talking about these ciphers, and I just want to just mention it because it's freaking funny to me. I glanced over at the manifest cipher list and I was just casually looking at it. And out the corner of my eye, I saw what I thought said cheeseburger. And I was like, that's a hell of a manifest cipher. But it actually says curse bringer. So that's what I was laughing about.
Well,
But a cheeseburger could be a manifest cipher.
But yeah, because think about it. I mean, you just imagine you find it. You find a cheeseburger, but it's a special cheeseburger.
Exactly.
You know what's funny? When you said cheeseburger and then manifest, I heard manwich. That's a man.
It's a man with cipher.
Oh
Yes.
man.
I mean, and I think that kind of what we've been talking about ciphers and not even with the way the book is set up. I think that's just perfect because it does move us right, truly
Just
into.
one other thing I think we should absolutely mention before we move off of ciphers is how the charts are way different now.
Oh yes. The thing we have.
I mean, this is 100 times better organized. It's broken down. It's actually broken down into manifest cipher table, a fantastic cipher table, manifest cipher form option table, subtle cipher table. There's so many different tables, and once again, it's that theme that's been running throughout the entire book, where not only did they restructure the way they organized everything, they gave you quick eye reference tables that it's a lot easier if you need to pull something quickly by using the PDF or the book. You could just look for a specific table and they'll give you an option or a list of stuff that might be good for your specific game or your moment at the table that you need something real quick. You need a subtle cipher. They all nicely listed in a table for you.
Right.
Yeah, and again, and that helps again with that flow of the game, which is very important. Because once you're like, I believe in the other table in the old book, it was broken down to like 4 or 5 separate tables or something like that, where you have to like roll a d6 and then off the d6 you can move it to another table or something like that.
Right.
And the way it is now, it's again, like Anthony was saying, it's much more streamlined. So when you're in the heat of the moment and you don't have something prepared, this helps you stay in that flow more efficiently.
Right.
And of course, it does the actual breakdown of each cipher, gives you the description, and lets you know whether it's a manifest or fantastic, or subtle. It still has the same, it still has the same types with a visual logo, so you could tell which is which.
Yeah, I think the logos were in the other game too. They were just different.
Yeah,
logos.
they were in the
Oh,
original as
book,
well.
Yeah.
Except for I don't think fantastic.
Oh no, yeah, your Fantastic is definitely a new logo. Yeah.
And like I said, and they even added like a nice little section, when you're looking at it, where they have them boxed in and they talk about different kinds of stuff like the power boost ciphers, which could definitely all be used as subtle ciphers, or you could give them a physical, they could be a pill that somebody pops, they could be an injection or whatever the case, but it's just like cool stuff, in the approaches to what ciphers are.
And once again, like, you don't have to use ciphers because that comes up a lot on our server if you don't want to. But my response is always, why wouldn't you? Because I think that's a big core of what Cypher System is and what makes it original and what makes it unique and what makes it different from a lot of other universal systems. So I would encourage you to use ciphers.
And I'm going to say this about ciphers. Everybody says, I don't want to use ciphers, but you use equipment in the game all the time. Ciphers are nothing but another name for disposable, one-time use equipment. Yeah. So you're using them. You just got to shift the thought process behind, when you sit down at the table and play this game.
Al, you was gonna say something?
No, it was more to piggyback of what you were saying, that while we do recommend using ciphers, your game can still be fun without them. I've definitely run games that either had maybe one cipher being used or none at all. But it was still a fun session. Everybody just gets caught up in the role playing and their own character's abilities, and they just forget about the ciphers. Or even me as a GM, I end up forgetting about them because the players are enjoying their characters so much and they're not really using them, so it doesn't come to the forefront. And if that's just how your game is flowing, like the people aren't really using them and they're having more enjoyment with with their own character aspects, again, there's no issue with that. It's as long as everyone's having fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and
so,
speaking
and
of fun,
well, I was just saying that's the perfect segue into what, because we've been touching on it anyway, is running Cypher System. which starts chapter 25, page 402 in the physical book, 404 on the PDF of the revised edition book. Um, the original book, if you really need to know the page number, that was page 273, 275. I'm sorry, 366 in the original book, or 368 in the PDF. But you know, let's jump in here, guys. I love the first thing that is actually talked about um in this. Like the first thing is the rules versus the story. It really touches on something very imperative. And it said you know there doesn't seem to be necessarily a lot of story in the rules, but that's by design because you're going to tell the story. Your players are going to tell the story. They're the driving forces. And rules don't need to. The rules are built not to inhibit you or not to inhibit your story. At least that's my take on it.
I mean, no, it's definitely a good take on it because this is the book is more again of a guideline for how you should be doing, or how to run a game. It's not going to lay out all the story bits for you. That's again for you and your players to come up with. But again, this section more touches on what you call it, on how to run your games effectively, like how to take you again. Let's talk about this rules versus story. How that the rules are more of a guideline that the
Right.
story should take the forefront. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all of our mindsets going into role playing games, but that's not always the case for everyone. A lot of people who come from other games are of the mindset that hey, rules, rules, rules. If it's not in the book, you can't do it. Blah blah blah. But in this system, it's a lot more flexible, and again, it brings the story to the forefront with that flexibility.
Right.
To compare and contrast the two books, I think the first 5 or 6 pages of running the system are exactly the same from the original. I think where it starts to deviate in the revised edition is when you start getting into the GM intrusion section. So if you have the original, once again, a lot of the core rules haven't changed for the exception of player intrusions, which we'll talk about shortly. So, a lot of these same advice and, the hitting a target number, it's all the same from the original. So if you read the original version, the first 5 or 6 pages of the revised edition are exactly the same. Just in case anybody wants to know.
And again, we will be breaking it down a little more, like rules and stuff, in another video for those of you who are interested in that.
But once they start getting into player intrusions, GM intrusions, they start to deviate from what they had in the original, opposed to what's in the revised.
Right.
They touch more on the narrative with intrusions that they didn't necessarily do in the original, which is very important because I think a lot of times a common, I wouldn't say mistake, but a common habit that a lot of new GMs to Cypher System do assume that a GM intrusion has to be something negative, which it doesn't, and two, has to be like something physical, like a combat related. When essentially a GM intrusion is just basically a change in the narrative. It adds an interesting aspect to the story. You know what I mean? And they break it down a little better in the book.
Here's a caveat. An intrusion doesn't necessarily have to be an obstacle. An intrusion sometimes can actually be, especially if you have your players struggling. If the players are struggling, let's just say they're having a bad dice night, whatever the case may be. A GM intrusion, could be, a way to, as Anthony said it, redirect the narrative a little bit, to pull them out of those situations where they're relying on dice rolls and stuff like that. A good example of that type of thing is like, one time we were playing GM roulette, and I was getting ready to, take the game in an entirely different direction, and GM used an intrusion to kind of redirect that whole situation, as opposed to, you know, the game being derailed and going down a different path that would have added time, unnecessary time, and everything else.
Wait,
It wasn't a bad thing. It was great.
are you talking about me and the superheroes one?
Yes, I am.
Something I actually remember.
But these are things that people sometimes make the mistake with. GM intrusions are just that. They're tools. These are the tools that you as a game master have at your disposal.
Yes.
So you know what? You don't necessarily have to have a random encounter chart. You don't necessarily have to have a wait for the players to roll a one or two, or whatever on the dice. You don't have to wait for those things if you see that something needs to be done. If the game is stalling or whatever the case may be, there's a GM intrusion in your hand to do that.
And again, Anthony already touched on this. People are not. It's again not a. I guess misconception would be the best word. Is that GM intrusions have to be negative? They have to be a hindrance, which
Right.
again isn't the case. You can always it's heavily implied that they should be some sort of hindrance or whatever have you. With you getting a GM intrusion on a one, right? So a lot of people think that, hey, GM intrusion, if they're getting it on a one, anytime I introduce a GM intrusion, it should be something negative, right? Or something like that. Even though it progresses the story or whatever have you. Again, we reject
like
that notion here.
Well, I'll give you an example of when a one rolled on the die doesn't have to be a
Oh, yeah.
negative.
And again, it
And,
doesn't have
and
to be.
and that's what I'm saying, because what I did was, I love to use my example. I was playing a fantasy game. We were playing, and the player character rolled a one. He had purported himself, the greatest swordsman, and he was living up to that reputation. And they were fighting city guards. He rolled a one. I was like, oh, cool. I got an idea. Boom. And basically, what happened was, when he swung his sword at the guy, the city guard caught the blade. He didn't break his sword. He didn't lower it, didn't fly across the room. And the city guard looked him in the face and went, "You're not as good as you think you are." And, that progressed the story. So now I had this new NPC. Yeah. So right on the spot, I had to, turn a typical guard, creature into an NPC. No big deal. I upped his level a little bit. I gave him a couple of special skills. You know what? It went back and forth. So what ended up happening was the players actually, I had an intrusion that turned into another story plot point because this guy became an antagonist and harassed them like for the next 3 or 4 sessions. You
and,
know,
and that is the beauty, the true beauty of the GM intrusion.
I also think in the new version they gave you some good examples of how not to abuse intrusions. And I
right?
know this was in the original version, but I like the way they phrased it in the revised. And and once again they gave the example of one intrusion per player. So if you have a group of four, that'll be four intrusions per session, plus whatever intrusions the players would get from rolling
One.
ones.
And they also talk about group intrusions now as well,
Yes.
because we were doing group intrusions for the longest as well.
And
Um,
they also give you the great list of examples once again of which I think this was in the original as well, but it's a little bit of a longer list where they break down once again to follow the theme of the new Cypher Core. They give you nice lists and charts for everything so you get a quick idea. You need a quick intrusion, a bad luck, somebody rolled a one. They give you a nice list of 7 to 8
Possible things. Yep.
possible things that can happen. I really love the way this book is structured in that sense.
Yeah, it really
And
helps with the on the fly GM who doesn't necessarily have everything planned out, and maybe the players that session are rolling an unusual number of ones, and your little reservoir of things you had in your pocket has run dry. You have this to fall back on.
and the other thing too, when you think about this whole concept of the GM intrusion, um, just remember that's exactly what it is. This is your toolkit as well. GM intrusions is where you as a player, I mean as a GM, you can shine a little bit. You get to have a little bit of fun. In the same respect, you're also not, limited to, any anything. So when you're telling to me, when you're telling a narrative game, you're running Cypher System, it's not one of those things that I would suggest ever trying to write out every possible twist and turn because Cypher System, you know, characters are always going to, drive you crazy. And
Yes.
speaking of driving you crazy, let's move into the next session of what this talks about, and that would be like, when you got to set difficulties, it gives
Oh
you a,
no, Miss Dean, we cut out the most important thing about intrusions, which
player intrusion,
pleasure intrusions, which wasn't in the original
right?
book.
Player intrusion. Yeah, but those aren't important.
They're
No,
actually
player
very
intrusions are
important.
very important.
Yeah,
Player intrusions give you the ability as a player to kind of take hold of the narrative, and in the character types, they actually give you examples of types of intrusions, for each player type. So that is really a cool idea, cool concept. Um, you know,
I mean, I would say this, first of all, once again, the compare and contrast, like I've been doing, this section is totally new.
Yeah.
there's
This was
nothing to
not
compare it to.
at all. So, you have about close to 4 pages on advice on running player intrusions that wasn't in the original. I really love the fact that they have a whole advice on educating player intrusions and how to figure out what's fair and what's valid to allow a player to spend 1 XP on. They give you examples of not being too heavy-handed and ways of if they don't ask for enough to give them more.
Yes.
And about just using basic logic, like basically understanding, hey, is this resource enough to allow someone? Does this make sense? And if it makes sense, then you should allow them to attempt it.
The one thing I really kind of dig too is that they kind of structure player intrusions where they do kind of it's kind of resolute towards their type. I think that's a cool aspect as well. Not to say that you have to lock people into that or anything else, but just the idea that the type of warrior type player intrusions are probably going to be dealing with some sort of conflict resolution. If you look at warrior types, they got the perfect setup. They've got the they might know somebody or things like that. Those things are cool. Just like whereas with the speaker might be able to have a contact in every town. Stuff like that. Somebody that's going to give them information. So I like that. Not to say that I would lock everybody into just that type of thing, but I think it's very, very nice that it does have some structure.
Again, it's nice that it does have the structure, but you don't want to, again, adhere to it too strictly because it could hinder someone's creativity. Like,
oh, no, that's what I'm saying.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. I'm just expanding upon it. Just to go back to the previous example we used of the detonation cipher being used as a rocket. Like, if someone wants to give me 1 EXP regardless of what their type is, I'm going to say, hey, that's a cool idea. You could definitely use it like that. Like, that's creative. That's awesome. Like, you definitely want to allow for that creativity to flow. Whereas the flip side is they give you that guidance on, like, maybe if it's too outside the realm of the character, maybe it shouldn't work. Like, let's say this hideously gruff warrior is trying to seduce or woo a diplomat. Like even if you give me 1 EXP, like that's not gonna fly. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Unless you're smart enough to say no, because I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, you got this gruff. You've got the tough guy. He's a man of few words. He might be a little ugly or whatever, but he says, I want to spend 1 cipher. I mean, one EXP to say that diplomat over there just has a secret fetish for guys like me.
I would say that's more like 2 EXP to alter an NPC. Like,
I don't even know if I would agree with. I think the whole reason why they make you at least put the types is because then it eliminates that person that wants to do everything.
Yes,
that's why you have a group. You know what I mean?
True.
you got to let the face guy do the face work. You know, because we've all played with that person that wants to be involved in every aspect, and that sounds like, yo, hey, dude, you're the big, you shouldn't be seducing anybody. That don't make it enough.
Yeah,
Well, when
unless
you
her name is
face
Brunhilde.
somebody, we'll call you. But this is Joey Blue Eyes turn, or
Yeah,
let him
exactly.
seduce.
It definitely makes a lot of sense when it's broken down like that.
You know, but to keep it going on the review, we like got sidetracked. You know, they also talk about dice rolling and how to incorporate when to ask for dice rolls. You know, I think that's a mistake that all of us make. Especially, I remember when I first started playing, I used to ask for dice rolls for everything. But as you get more experience, you learn to know you could keep the narrative flowing, keep the game flowing. If you don't need to roll a dice, then just let them have it. Like, you know, the guy wants to jump 2 flights of, 2 steps on the staircase. Okay, you make it. You know, like,
yeah, there's no reason for like again for those like even though like they're trying to do something cool or something have you like again jumping a flight of stairs or whatever have you that might again it might depend on your genre. Maybe these are kids and they need a roll on that. But if it's like a seasoned like superhero game or something like they can just jump down the freaking flight of stairs, or even if it's like a sci-fi setting or something like that, and they're adventurers in a fantasy setting or whatever, jumping down some trivial amount of that, there's no need to roll on that.
now, if they jumping down a flight of stairs while the building's on fire, that's a
The
different
story, yes, exactly.
But go ahead, dude.
I was just saying that there's like a lot of stuff in here, like, you know, what you're talking about, you know, and it just ties right into, it says modifying abilities on the fly or whatever, you know, if there's a reason for something to be amped up, like you were saying, you know, the building's on fire, so the structural integrity of the building is falling apart. Of course, we got to modify this situation. Yeah, we know you jump down, you know, stairs all the time, but you don't always jump down flaming stairs that are falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like how you said, you know, when you talked about modifications, you know, they give you advice on dealing with character abilities. We're not going to touch like all the bits of advice because we want you to buy the book and actually read it. You know, they give you advice on dealing with character abilities and how to incorporate them to specific genres, which is excellent advice.
Yes.
Everyone should read. It also gives you advice on modifying abilities on the fly, which I think we all, you know, do rather well. But for those that don't, you know, it's a lot of good advice.
Yeah, it's just again to try to spark that creativity. Where again, when we talked about the detonation cipher, the same goes true for your abilities. If you can kind of maybe convince the GM that it should work a slightly different way, then yeah, like, you know, go for it, angle for it. I'm blanking on any examples right now from like ability, you know, character type abilities, but you can definitely try to use them in ways that the book doesn't say. And maybe, again, this could be a player intrusion. Maybe the GM says, hey, that's a really cool modification, but it's a little bit too much. Maybe if you give me 1 EXP, then we can let that happen. And again, that's another example of what is it? The creativity and flexibility of the system. Maybe it's just a slight modification. They just have to roll a little bit higher to do it. Maybe it's an extreme modification. They have to offer up that EXP for it. But either way, there's a way in the system, built into the system, to compensate for that adjustment of the ability.
They also touch on NPCs and character depth, which is, you know, something that everyone should read. It touches on having
character arcs, how to deal with
allies and work with the party.
how to deal with character arcs within the system.
Yeah.
You know, it talks about higher tier characters, character deaths, things like that.
How to teach the rules. Once again, we're not going to touch on every single one of these, but it's, you know, it's a lot of useful information. I will say this, a lot of this information was in the original as well. There's some slight differences. So if you had the original, you probably read this. But I use that as a bonus, actually, because it lets you jump into the game quicker. Because
there's even a section on talking about teaching the rules, and it literally says that. It literally says, don't attempt to teach the rules before you sit down to play. Just start playing, because it's easier to absorb them, you know, allow you jumping in. You know, if you learn the rules and you got it, it's so much easier to just get people at the table.
And this is my favorite section because Al could tell you that this is something I harp on the most, but it's pacing. I don't know if I want to harp on pacing, but there is some excellent advice. You know what I really love about this section? It breaks down pacing into every form. It gives you advice on pacing an encounter. It gives you an advice in pacing a game session. It gives you an advice in pacing a campaign. It gives you an advice on pacing a scene, an action, the entire story. This is awesome. I'm
Definitely.
gonna
Oh,
cut and paste this and email it to Al every day for a month.
but yeah, it's definitely. I feel like I can't even talk about this section with a straight face. But it definitely helps with those people such as myself who have a hard time figuring how long maybe a scene should last, or maybe a battle encounter, or some kind of like specific encounter instead of the overarching story. And again, it also talks about pacing that overarching story, pacing. You know, how again, I'm actually now learning about campaign pacing because I guess I'm running my first campaign with my coworkers at CVS. You know, this is like the fourth or fifth session we've had this past week on Wednesday. I guess it was yesterday. And now I'm learning like, hey, like if they continue at this certain pace, like they might reach a certain tier too fast or whatever have you. And this helps you break that down, you know, in a way that again it talks about longer campaigns, shorter campaigns, etc. And it helps you figure out what's a good way for you to again paste it so it's still enjoyable for everyone. That's not too drawn out or too short or whatever have you. And very useful stuff.
I love how they give the advice about using GM intrusions to either speed up or slow down the pace of a specific scene. That is excellent advice. Once again, I don't want to read it out for you. I want you to read it for yourselves.
Well,
but
here's
that's
what I'm saying.
awesome.
What Anthony and Al were both talking about with pacing and all that. I'd like to, jump in and say that this little piece goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. It goes hand in hand with the whole idea of the Cypher system. They have a section talking about mistakes, about making mistakes. And the beautiful part about it is it really isn't a mistake. It's a learning process. They would say the point is, there are times that what you may have went, oh damn, that should have been a level 3, or that should have been a level 4 difficulty. I only made it a level 2. You know what? Nobody knows but you. So at the end of the day, it's not a mistake. It's guess what? It's a learning. It's a learning opportunity. And that's how you get better at this whole thing. Setting up that pacing, setting up that genre, setting up that sequence. That's how you figure out how to use GM intrusions to your advantage. That's how you learn how to arbitrate over player intrusions. Make the mistake. Because the mistake is not really a mistake. It's a learning moment.
Yeah. I can't speak for every GM in the world, but I fail to see a GM that's ever had a flawless game. I think everyone makes mistakes. It's how you handle those mistakes and how do you recover from them is what makes the exceptional GMs. It makes the better GMs, the ones that are quickly could forget about the mistake and just keep the narrative flowing. Mm-hmm. Everyone makes them. There's, there might be the perfect GM out there that I've never met, but I think everyone makes mistakes. If you are the perfect GM, let us know in the chat.
And here's another cool aspect of what what Anthony's saying about that. You know what? I got my hands on Numenera way back in 2013 when it first came out, when it was, brand spanking new. And when I sat down at the table to run my first game and I'm thinking about the Cypher system, I was a little broken. Like I said, I've been gaming for over 40 years, but it had me shook because I couldn't, it literally, I had to shift my paradigm because I had come from, the super crunchy games. I had come from, everything being defined, in the adventure and everything. And the beautiful thing about it, though, was because I knew there was something special. It was something special. The setting, whatever it was, called to me. I had to figure it out, and that's the other thing I like to say. They even talk about that in the rules. It's called consistency. You know, don't give up. You know, you're gonna make mistakes while doing this. You know, you just have to accept that. You know, the rules even tell you that. Accept the fact that you're gonna make mistakes. But when you learn from those mistakes, it makes you a better GM. It makes you, it makes you know when you finally do get it, when you finally get that rhythm, and you know you got it. You know what? It's one of the most fulfilling moments in the whole idea.
And honestly, this advice isn't just for gaming. This is a solid life lesson, quite honestly. In life, you're gonna make mistakes. We're all
Knowing
humans.
is half the
Yeah,
battle.
exactly. People make mistakes, and again, mistakes are okay. But the important thing is to learn from them, improve going forward. If you're just gonna keep making the same mistakes, then you're not really improving as a person, or and in this case, as a GM.
Speaking of mistakes, to steer us back into the walkthrough of the book, we, it goes into handling players. We're gonna dealing with mature themes, designing encounters, which is a very good chapter as well. Resolving encounters, challenging characters. Once again, we're not gonna go through word for word or what the book says because we want you to read it, but it has a couple paragraphs on how to do higher tier characters, on dealing with character depth, switching foci and descriptors. A lot of this was in the original book. Once again, just so I could compare and contrast. So if you read the original, you might not have to read this, but once again, to me, that's a bonus because you could concentrate on the stuff that's different and you could get back into the game quicker. They also give you an example of play, which I believe is the same exact example of play. I
Yeah, it
could
is.
be wrong because I'm not going to lie, I didn't read this.
I read the original. I think it's the same one. I'll give me a second. I'll look at it.
It could be. We have enough play examples in our. but yeah, it's definitely useful for people who actually have not been in a game and or kind of trying to wrap their heads around how a certain situation might go down. This
I'm
is
not
the
gonna lie.
section for you.
I pick up a new system. I always tend to I read the example of play. I read the character creation first because it gives me an idea of what the system before I even touch the game mechanics of running the game. I just read those two because it gives you an idea. Okay, what's the core conflict resolution mechanic? Because once you learn that, it's easier to learn the rest of the system.
Yep, and then it's
Yeah, it's the
definitely.
exact. It's the same example of play. One of the other things that I noticed in here that I really dug, and it's kind of funny because I had the Cypher System rule book, the original, since it came out. Now I have this one, but because we were doing a review, it's stuff that I think as an experienced GM, you sometimes glaze over. But then when you're doing a comparing and contrasting, you kind of look closer at certain things. And one of the things that I did notice that I hadn't looked at before was the section on crafting your stories. That is a pretty, that section is so solid. I mean, and I'm quite sure it was in the original book. Um,
I have
but
the original open here. Let me see. Okay, keep on talking, dude. I can
but I'm
find
just
it.
saying, crafting your stories, those things, these are this book. When you really think about it, we're talking about a 450-page book that is chock full of nothing but solid advice on crafting and building a story, as opposed to, you know, 70% rules for you to digest. And I love that. I love the fact that even the running the cipher system section, it's 48 pages or so, or maybe less than that, maybe 40 pages. But that section is really still chock full of approach, as opposed to
Mechanic.
learn this rule and learn that rule. Because guess what? You really only have to learn, a few rules.
Yep.
Conflict resolution rule. You have to learn the basic mechanics, and once you got that down, everything else is subjective.
Yep.
Dean, for the record, it's in the original as
Right.
well. Same
But
exact.
like I said, guys, look at those things, people out there. Thanks for watching us and listening to us, because we're we love this. We love this.
Yes.
All right, to
I know
go
I can.
back, let break off the tangent for a minute. We got a few more things we got to do before we got to end. After the examples of play, it gives you the appendix, which is once again Monica Games. They know what they're doing. It gives you the index. Everything is clearly legible. It gives you the exact page. It's easy to look something up, which is top notch. They give you a campaign design worksheet, which I think this is almost the same, except that now there's different foci. So it lets you with the little boxes you check. So when you're running a game, you could pick which foci you will allow your players to use, which is awesome.
Yep.
Gives you a character sheet.
And,
it looks identical, and that's the book.
No. Actually, the character sheet changed a little bit in a positive way. I might add. It actually was talked about on the server recently. So in the old, I actually have character sheets in front of me. So the old character sheet, right? The skills are broken down by type, right? Or skills. So it's might, speed, intellect, so on and so forth.
That's no longer a thing.
Yeah, so in the new book, because again, everything's subjective. One action, like let's say running, could be a speed in one situation, or could be might in another situation. So having it broken down by stat, like in the old character sheet, was a little confusing for some. Whereas in the new character sheet, you see here, it's just a special ability, just a skills. It's blank now. Not blank, but it's not grouped in those categories. So again, you can decide on the fly, hey, this running skill is actually going to be might based, or hey, it's going to be speed based, or whatever the case might be.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Al, because that was a situation that I had to contend with at Gen Con this year.
Yeah.
Because of the change in the sheet, and people were looking, going, wait a minute, why is it pool? Well, what do you mean pool? And then they had to train and everything else. And see, now it makes perfect sense, what it was for. It took me a minute to figure it out myself because I was thrown off by it as well. So people were thrown off, but so now it's listed that way, so you can actually mark in the pool that you want to be there. But again, like you said, it is subjective because a person with a climb skill might be able to climb the wall faster than a person, with with just might. He's strong, but in those would be the applicable ways, well, I'm a skilled climber. I want to use my speed pool, to.
Yeah, I think it was more bad for newer players. Like they didn't understand because if it was labeled as speed, they thought I could only use it as speed. But I'll give you a perfect example is running. There's a difference between a sprinter, which might be speed, as opposed to a marathon runner, which might be might.
And even in the old book, in the old rule system, it would make those distinctions. For example, if you had stealth, you had you had skill in all stealth skills and so on and so forth. Or you had the foci run like the wind. It would say, you were, you're good at speed. You're a fast sprinter, but you don't have a lot of endurance. Or you're very dexterous. So anything that has to do with dexterity, yeah, you're good at it. But you know what? You're not necessarily very fast. Things like that, which would throw people off. Well, how do I have a inability here, but yet still I have an asset over here? Well, now you understand.
Is this sheet now downloadable on the Monica Games website?
I don't know.
I don't think so, because I think that was one of the complaints from the thing was that they can only lift the character sheet from the revised
PDF. Yeah, they don't have a fillable,
and it's not a form fillable. However,
I'm pretty sure they'll post one soon, though.
I mean, I forget if you have to pay for the character folios they put out. Like the PDFs, I know you have to pay for the physical ones, but because we got it as part of the Kickstarter, so I don't know if you can get the PDF.
Have to pay for.
You got to pay for you can buy the character folios. Those cost.
The PDF though, I mean.
Yeah, the PDFs too. Yeah.
So the PDF is awesome because it's form fillable, but it makes it into like an 8-page thing instead of like a 1-page back and
24 page.
The folio is 24 pages.
Yeah.
She said you were able to download for free, or was that from the PDF? I don't remember from the original.
Oh, actually, that reminded me of something. I believe someone said, and maybe one of us can confirm real fast by going to the website, that how they have that section in the download section where you could download the Cypher System character sheet.
Right,
I think they changed it from the old one. Now, when you go to download that, you get the new one. I could be wrong.
Well, they normally update it, and they normally let you know when they update it. But I'll look real quick.
But either way, though, you still have that character sheet in the PDF itself, which you can save just those couple pages
I
and.
mean, that was an excellent point, and I think that leads into our final thoughts about the revised Cypher System Core. And I guess I'll leave these with some questions. So I want to know from each one of you guys: is it worth it? Is it worth, or does it make sense to stick to the original? What do you say? Is it worth getting the revised core book, or do you think you would rather stick to the original book?
Me personally, if I'll say it this way, if you are a hardcore Cypher system lover, if you enjoy just creating, awesomeness, this is definitely a must-have item. And I would tell you to get the core. I would tell you to get the physical book as well as the PDF, because the PDF is hyperlinked. So it's great for when you're running games, especially if you're out and about. You just got your tablet or you just got your phone. Quick access. It is definitely worth the price tag, the $69 price tag.
Jumping the gun.
What did you say?
No. But either way, wait, were you done making your point, Dean? Or
I was just yeah. Go ahead.
For sure. If you enjoy Cypher System, you should definitely move on. Like, I know the first book was beloved. My book is falling apart at this point. But it is time to move on. It was a good time, but they have definitely improved it way too much to ignore. That's not to say that if you can't afford or whatever have you the revised edition, stick with the old one. It's still just as good. Like, you don't lose really anything from that version to this version. Again, aside from the improvements we've mentioned in these 3 videos, it still runs the same way. There's still focus descriptors. You still have what you need to run Cypher System with the old book. So if you find yourself in a position, like, let's say you've never touched Cypher System, like you don't have any of the books or PDFs, and you find yourself in a position that you can only acquire the old book because, let's say, finances or whatever have you, go for it. Dive in with the old book. It's just, you get the same Cypher experience.
There's just those few things, and those few things that are not available in the old book. Just talk to somebody. They'll take care of you. They'll get you where you need to be, as far as the additional items, or should I say mechanics to the game.
So for my take, I would absolutely think it's worth it. I think that just for the sake of the way the book is structured and formatted, it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for, a lot quicker. I think it's the character creation, the advancements they did at character creation, the adding of the player intrusion mechanic, the changes to the ciphers, making like I said earlier, making the subtle ciphers the base. All those improvements just makes the book 100 times better. Even though I love the original, that's my Bible. I absolutely love this version of the book. But with that said, we do all appreciate the new book, and we all think it's worth it. I would be, it wouldn't be fair to us if we didn't bring this up. Like I said, we want to do an unbiased opinion. But what do you guys feel about the raise in price in the book? It went from $59 to $69. Is the extra $10 worth it? Do you think it's fair of them to ask for a $10 price hike?
Real quick before we touch on that, I did download the character sheet pack, and the new character sheet is in there.
Okay, cool. Is it form fillable?
It is both the regular and form fillable.
And it's free, right?
And it's the free character pack is there.
That's what I thought.
Awesome.
So when expect to be downloading the character pack like 4 more times, because if there's character sheets in the new 4 settings, they'll be there too.
Oh, yep. But to go back to the question about the price tag, right? And also, as a side question for the price tag, how much is the PDF for those who want to get into it? I think it's like
24.
You said 20 what?
24.
$24.99 or but either way, $25.
But that was the price of the original as well, wasn't it?
The PDF.
No, they were 19.
19. Okay,
Either way,
then,
though,
like once again, you know, we want to do an unbiased opinion, so we should state all those things.
they both went up in price slightly. $5 for the
And
PDF, $10
no,
for
and
the
I'm
physical
wrong. I'm
book.
sorry. The PDF went up to $22.99.
Okay, so either way, a few dollars more. Still very much worth it. With the let's talk about the PDF first. With the PDF, it's extremely well organized. Just the book, like the layout of the book itself, is just beautiful, and you get all the hyperlinking, which is super vital to like navigating a book like this, especially with how this particular book is laid out, where the abilities in each section don't really have the descriptions. You definitely want to have that hyperlinking so you can get to the description immediately without having to flip through pages or whatever, have you scroll through the the layout or whatever have you. So very well worth it. And then the physical book of $70 or $69, again, still very worth it. Even if it's an increase from the price of the other book, there are how many more extra pages? Again, I don't know the exact counts, but it's
32.
It's a big.
The original book shows 418 on the PDF. This book is 450.
So again, this is a bigger book, one, and two. You also have to remember that it's not just, even though it is one book, it's not just one book. It's essentially where we're playing D&D or Pathfinder or something. You have to get the DM guide, the player's guide, the monster manual, whereas this book just has all of that there.
Let me just put it this way. Is the $10 price hike worth it to me? Absolutely. More pages, still a great system. The thought processes behind the layout of the book. And, as Al was saying, I don't even look at it, where people call it a rule. No, this to me is a toolkit. Monty Cook Games has said that about the new books coming out. Well, they just proved, that they sure know how to make a toolkit. This gives me everything I could absolutely hope for if I were going out and buying a book. I mean, if I was going to go buy, if I'm going to play D&D or, I have those books over there, that was $150 for the core, for me to run a D&D game. Because I had the Dungeon Master's Guide, the Player's Handbook, and the Monster Manual. All of them have a $50 price tag. This has a $70 price tag. So
exactly my point.
Just to play a little bit of the devil's advocate, I guess. I absolutely think it's worth it. I absolutely would and did purchase it at its price point. That's without question. I think it's worth. The additional pages, the way the book is structured is absolutely worth the $69 price point. But I will say this: the higher the price of core books going up, it kind of, I fear that sometimes it might eliminate the younger gamers when they start to see, price points upwards, to the $70 to $80, and not everyone can afford those price points. I mean, we all additional, we all adults here that, we all have jobs and we all can, we have the extra cash to be able to afford luxuries like this, but I don't think everyone does. So I get a little hesitant when I see like this is the going trend, not only with Monty Cook Games, but with a lot of gaming companies.
Well, I will, and again, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. Oh, no argument. No, literally, I'm just going to play the other side of the coin is that we are living in a new age, and you're talking about younger people. I know a lot of younger people that don't want a physical book. They don't care. They want a PDF. So $22, $23 for a PDF, a hyperlink PDF, everybody's on a phone, everybody's on a tablet. I think it's a fair.
I'm not saying that it isn't worth it or.
I'm not either. I'm saying I think it's a fair. I think it's a fair trade.
Other devil's advocate, and we could say, "Hey, Savage Worlds is $10."
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's but I'm saying there's a fair trade-off. You're talking about us. We're old guys.
Yeah.
We truly, we love this. You love the smell of it. You like the way it feels.
I'm not saying that.
All I'm saying is I know, and I get what you're saying. I understand
You
what
didn't
you're
let
saying
me
about the
finish
higher
my
price
point.
point. Huh?
You didn't let me finish my point before you interrupted me.
Yes, I did. Okay, go for it.
What I was saying is, I fear that not only Monte Cook Games, but I feel that all gaming companies are moving into this higher price point. And I remember the 14-year-old me couldn't afford the $15 to get the original Dungeons and Dragons book. So even if it's a $22, $25 PDF, even that is it's a little on the higher end now.
Yeah, oh, no, I'm not. I was not arguing that point. But what
Right.
I
Why
was
did you interrupt
Well, all
me?
right. Let me interject here with a little level-headed, like not I don't know what to. Let me just hop in here. So, just as again, it could be very expensive to purchase these books. Yes, that's a given. With any sort of printed literature, when you get to these bigger books, these bigger, like, this is not an average size, like,
And
reading
just
book.
for the record, so no one thinks, it's absolutely worth the $69. I wasn't saying that.
But
That wasn't the point I was making.
But no, yeah, the point Anthony was making was that that price point is not accessible to everyone, which is true. It's 100% true. Not everyone can drop $70 on a brand new book. Like, it's facts. But you also have to remember, even again with Dean's point, the $23 for the PDF. Again, that's not feasible for some people. It seems kind of ridiculous because we have jobs or whatever have you. But even $23, $25 could be too much for someone. So on the hinge of this coin, like the side of it, because you guys took both sides of the coin, I'm on the hinge. So on the hinge of this coin, you have entryways that don't involve money. You have the rules primer, right? That gives you the basics on how to play the game, right? Once you have the rules primer, it's free. You know how to play the system, right? Gives you the basics on all the what the right dice rolls mean, effort, edge, all that stuff, right? And then there's also free pre-written adventures. Like, I forget the one we played, something about the sea. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name.
Ashes of the Sea.
Yes, Ashes of the Sea, right? So that's a free adventure you could download. And if I'm not mistaken, that free adventure has pre-gens, yes?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
with just the primer and this one, I'm sure there's other free adventures, you have the tools to play a game. You have a character that has the skills and abilities on it. I'm not sure if the abilities are actually written on the character sheets. Like,
They are.
Like full on, you don't need the
They
book.
tell you exactly what they do.
Yeah, so
the character sheet.
so boom, with the free primer and an adventure that has pre-gens, you are playing Cypher System for free. And again, you're missing out on all the lovely like art and genre advice and the stuff to craft your own things. But if you're poor, like you're like the poor gamer, right? Like you're just barely getting by. You still have the tools to get into Cypher System. It's not, again, we're talking about barriers and gateways. Cypher System has done a great job, or I guess Monte Games has done a great job in making it still accessible for people who can't buy the full product.
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
And that would lead into our next question. Would you recommend the book to someone that's never played Cypher System before?
100%.
Yes.
As someone who, again, I'm a newer gamer compared to you guys. I've been only gaming about maybe 3 years at this point, 4 years. My biggest, I guess, gateway into getting into gaming was how complex everything seemed. Like, there was always rules for taking certain actions or whatever have you. It just seemed like so much to absorb. And then Anthony showed me the Cypher System, and just him describing it, me looking at the book, I'm like, anybody could be playing role-playing games, doing anything they want. Like, they don't have to be locked into fantasy. They don't have to be locked into all these complex rules that have you looking at the book more than enjoying the session. Like, it's an awesome system, and buy it if you don't have it. And if you can't buy it, go back to what I just said. Like, get that rules primer, get a free camp or a free adventure of like one shot. Try it out, and then start saving pennies here and there, and then you can eventually earn up to that $25. Because again, it's hard. Again, I understand the plight of I grew up kind of poor. Like $25 can be a luxury, but over time you can earn that $25, and you still have your way to play while you earn that.
Right.
I mean, I would absolutely 100% recommend it. It's my favorite system. That's it's no secret. So I'm 100% recommending this book to everyone that I know, but most of the people I game with knows I'm a Cypher guy, so they're gonna know what my recommendation is before I even open my mouth. But I'll absolutely recommend it. Dean?
Unequivocally, yes. There's no other way to say it. Cypher System, it's funny. I Cypher System, even my wife, never touched a game, in all the years, never was a gamer or anything. We met, and I introduced her to the Cypher System, 4 years ago. And if I say, honey, let's play, you know what? Guess what? She's down. She's ready to play. She wasn't a gamer, and we tried D&D, and D&D didn't sit right. But Cypher System was perfect. This weekend we're going to be running some No Thank You Evil, which is, the really trimmed down version of Cypher System. We're going to have the grands over, and it's going to be a great time. So yes, get it, do whatever you got to do to get it, but no, don't do whatever. Don't want you out there going doing crime, no crime, but that's, on the right side of the law that you have to do.
And I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. So yeah, get the book if you can.
I guess the last question we'll ask is, how do you think the Cypher system stacks up against other universal gaming systems? Because that's essentially what the Cypher system is.
I'll answer first because my answer is probably going to be shortest. I actually have not really played any other Universal systems. I kind of have.
Fate before?
I don't think we've actually ever played Fate.
You played Savage Worlds. I know for a fact you played.
Yes,
Savage Worlds.
I have played Savage World, but again, my experience is not in depth or anything, so it's hard for me to compare, other Universal systems. But I will say this. When I first tried to get into role-playing games, and I saw that, Anthony was running D&D or whatever have you, and talking about, the fantasy setting that is D&D. But I wanted to do something else. I forget what my idea was at the time, but I just wanted to try, something else that wasn't fantasy or something. And he suggested GURPS. And he gave me the GURPS book, and I was looking at this book. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, my role playing knowledge is not extensive or anything. So, like, when I was looking at how complex GURPS was for all the different niches of genres and whatever have you, and how there's a rule for every skill or whatever, I was just like.
In my defense, Cypher System wasn't out yet.
Yeah, this was before Cypher System, so I was like, "Damn, what the hell am I looking at here? Like, how am I supposed to make the heads or tails of this?" And then, again, a few months later or whatever, maybe a year later, Anthony shows me Cypher System, and then everything just clicks. It's just... it's hard for me to compare Cypher System to other Universal systems because it was only the second Universal system I was really introduced to, and then after I was introduced to it, all other Universal systems just pale in comparison. I've kind of read the Savage World books, I've kind of read the Fate books, but... just looking at the books and again, I've played a little bit of Savage Worlds, just the level of crunchiness that Cypher offers and the flexibility and everything we've talked about why we love it is why I consider it the best of the Universal systems, because it's just everything just connects so nicely for me. It's easy to run, there's not much to worry about, it's very rules light, narrative friendly. It just hits all the spots for someone who wants to tell a story with kind of gameplay elements, not a heavy game mechanic thing with story elements, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it for me.
Anthony?
Hands down, Cypher System is my favorite Universal system, but I will say this: there's some systems that obviously does stuff better, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily a better system for me. You mentioned GURPS. GURPS has a rule for everything, and I think you mentioned it earlier, but Cypher System has the level of crunch that I want as a GM. It gives me enough crunch, enough mechanics that I have a shell of be able to tell the stories I want to tell within the mechanical structure of the game. So I really appreciate that. But I do acknowledge that I like some of the stuff that Savage Worlds does, especially the new version of Savage Worlds. I still like Fate. I just prefer Cypher System. It has the right amount of crunch for me. the right amount of narrative. It's that perfect balance. It's that sweet spot for me. But I do acknowledge that it's not a perfect system. I don't think any system is perfect, but I think it's great enough for me. So I absolutely think it's my favorite universal system. But it doesn't mean that I don't like others. I just like Cypher System more.
And you know what? And it's going to be a trifecta. It's universal that we all agree that Cypher System is the best universal system for us. Um, like what Anthony said, I can't even say that I feel other systems do other things better. They just do it differently. Because I think it becomes a matter of perspective. Anthony's, summed it up. You summed it up, Al, when you were saying it has the level of crunch for you, you know, and the same thing for me because I look at I look at the resolution mechanic, I look at the baseline mechanic of the game, and I realize how many different things I've been able to do with it. How many questions I've been able to answer, and what what really works for me about it being a universal system is the fact that it is the same mechanic. You know what? I don't have to pull another idea, another concept. I don't have to reread, this modification or this rule in order to get something done within the confines of the game. Savage Worlds, love the system. I absolutely love Savage Worlds. I think what they've done with their new edition, their second edition, is pretty damn awesome. You know, and Savage Worlds has its place. You know, and for me, it's like I guess I'll play. Anthony has said it many times. I'll play anything. I just don't necessarily want to run it. I don't. If I'm going to run a game, I'm going to adapt it to Cypher System, and I'm going to make it happen. And now, especially with this universal system, the way they've broken it down and opened it up, it's everything that I've ever thought about. It's the concept that I enjoy because literally, like, you know, bits and pieces, I can build whatever I want for whatever genre I want.
Yep.
So that's me as far as it is all concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's by all in all, I think our consensus is Cypher System, awesome universal system. Pick it up if you have not. If you can't pick it up, find those means to get your hands in there. Because again, aside from what I mentioned about the primer and free adventures, there's also the Cypher Unlimited Discord server where we have plenty of people who are willing to help you learn the system with their own pre-generated characters, with their own stories. And again, you don't necessarily have to have the book for these. They will help you, again, just like the pre-generated characters from these official adventures. The characters will have the abilities on there usually, like, and if not, the GM or whatever have you will explain it to you. Hopefully, like what your character can do. And it's again, buying the book should be not a priority, but you should definitely buy it if you can. Lead to it if you can, but don't let that limit your enjoyment of Cypher System, because there are ways.
Right. And with that being said,
Without piracy, please don't.
Yes, no pirate. Yes, do not. Yes, exactly.
yeah, you have to, let's be honest, people. In order to get the quality of stuff that comes out, support the creators. You know, no matter, I mean, the Cypher System does have a big price tag, and it's becoming well known. There's a lot going on with it, but you got to remember they're still basically an independent company. They don't have the backing of a mega corporation like Hasbro, or they're a small operation. So support those people.
Most
And you know
definitely.
what? Like we said before, come over to Cypher Unlimited. Come hang out. Welcome to our worlds. We have tons of them, and the three of us alone are always willing to run a game. You know, just let us know.
Final thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah, and if you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed this walkthrough as much as we enjoyed making it, please let us know. And if you dislike this video and you think we're a bunch of idiots, let us know about that too. Any comments is good comments on our end, so we appreciate any feedback we could get. I think next week, our next video will probably be about consent and gaming, because I think that's a topic that we all have strong opinions on, and we did, we were in the middle of doing this, and we didn't get a chance to make that video. But after that, we open to any request for any sort of video, anything Cypher related, anything non-Cypher related. You want us to talk about Al's experience with GURPS? We could do that as well.
Yeah,
And the other thing, and one other thing to add to what Anthony just said, I forgot your name, your handle on YouTube, but that play and rules video is coming. We heard you loud and clear when you told us that we should have had a video about that.
But yeah,
So it's coming.
it's definitely coming. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Be sure to like, share, subscribe. Get us more viewership because we can continue to make these awesome videos for you awesome people. Be sure to hit the little bell down below so you can get notifications as to when we post our videos. And yeah, any goodbyes, gentlemen?
We love you, Monica Games.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
We cannot wait, for what comes next. Just so everybody knows, the Stars Are Fire is, I guess they said it went to print already, or was getting ready for shipping, and Stay Alive is on the docket. So 2 new settings, 1 horror setting, 1 sci-fi setting, and let me revise that, toolkits, because that's what they call them in the Kickstarters. They will have setting material, but hey guys, we're here.
But yeah, very exciting stuff coming for the future, and be sure to look out for the videos on those things because they sure are to come. And yeah, from us, thank you so much for watching, and from us at the CU, we will see you later.